Do you know what everyone thinks about on one of the hottest days of the year? That's right, horror. Hey ho, I'm Rachel. This is Missy. We're Miss Daisy Sewing, and today we're going to be looking through all of the boxes of horror costumes I have and looking to create something new. I have the Unseelie Gathering on the 1st of August, and it's a sort of LARPing type quest horror thing. It's the first year they've run it. I'm not entirely too sure what it's going to be like, but what I do know is that you pick a faction, and the team with the most points at the end of the day doing little quests wins. We're going to go with the Withered, and the idea with the Withered is that they are all things death and decay from which life grows. So I want to create something that is going to look like a shambles, a sort of magic type witchy shambles that's been created from all things from the forest floor. So, do you know what? Hold on a second. My main idea is that I don't want to be creating an entirely new outfit. What I want to do is go through all the random odds and ends that I've created in the loft, particularly stuff that's not really going to get repurposed, stuff for the horror nights, and create something new from that. There is going to be an entirely new piece, but that's fine. I don't have a lot of time, but I do have time to do like one big embellishment piece. What I want to do is start with my Robin Hood as the base here. So I've got my tunic and I've got my pirate pants. Now you haven't seen how I've made the pirate pants. I did those for the Robin Hood video, but just realised it was overrunning, so just omitted it. So what I'm going to do is let you guys see how those were made whilst I hop up into the loft and dig out some more pieces. The pirate pants are from the Heroes Cosplay book and have been on my to sew list for quite a while now. And whilst I do love this book, this is another one, like the Gertie Sews, where the patterns are all kind of overlaid on top of one another when you're tracing them out, so this is the most difficult part of this pattern. I'd earmarked this really nice, very soft brown corduroy, and the one thing to note with corduroy is that it is directional, so I had to make sure all of my pattern pieces were cut in the one direction, otherwise I would have ended up with a panel being darker or lighter than the rest of it. This is not the most conservative way to cut pattern pieces, and I really had to squeeze out every inch that I could. I think I'm going to need some brown fabric for the pockets. I've really maxed out the space here. Plan now is to get all of this cut and then look at the proper assembly. I'm not gonna lie, there was a lot more pieces to these shorts than I expected there to be. I only need to overlock around the pockets and the two side seams in this pattern. I've been wanting to play about with the overlocking stitch on my sewing machine, so I've given it a go here on some scrap, and I'm just going to go ahead and do that on those side seams and the pockets here. For this weird little stitch, it took me a while to figure it out, because it's this symbol here, but the key thing is I need to change this to the S, and then amend my stitch width so that it actually does that back and forth hop. Yeah, quickly get on with those and then we can start proper assembly. Full disclosure, whilst this is really handy if you don't have an overlocker, this stitch actually takes ages to do on the sewing machine, so I probably would have been faster just digging out my overlocker, threading it and getting going, but it was really good to practice this and I'm pleased I've had a go at this stitch. Sleepy doggy. So the instructions are quite good on this. Our first step is going to be sort of doing the stay stitching and basically sorting out the fly. Yes, are you helping? Sorting out the fly, and then after that assembly is fairly normal for a pair of trousers. Whoop, move your ear. And then after that is just gathering for the waistband and the leg cuffs. So let's just gently with the ear, thank you. Let's just get this fly bit figured out and start the assembly. Whilst not as difficult as I expected it to be, flies are finicky,
So I did it mostly off camera because there was a lot of putting it down, placing it, picking it up, pinning it, putting it down, placing it. But I did get there in the end and I was pleased with how it turned out. After that, it was construction as usual when it comes to sort of trousers or shorts. I did add in some pockets because pockets, but apart from that, it didn't really deviate from the pattern.
Everything is gathered. I'm going to start with the legs here before doing the waistband. I'm trying not to impale myself on pins.
Then once the waistband and cuffs were on, it was onto those finishing touches, getting the buttonholes on, the buttons, and doing the little grommets for that corset tie. And with that, the shorts were complete. Now back to present me.
I survived the loft. Not everything has. So my Fey Queen, which survived the Horror Nights, has unfortunately been crushed whilst it's been in the box, so that antler's kind of goosed, which is fine. I don't really want to reuse this headpiece, but I am going to reuse the cloak and all of the leaves and the bones and stuff in there. And I'm also going to reuse the bandages from my veneer outfit. What I want to do is kind of like leg wraps, so that's sort of military leg wraps, and I actually do have some of those, so I'm going to use the real ones on my legs and then use these ones like on my arms. I'm not quite sure how that's going to work or how it's going to look, but that's the idea. And then with the cloak, I'm going to take the crown off and then kind of drape it over the bulk of the green just to really tone down the colour, but add sort of texture and layers into it. And then I'm one piece de resistance. But for that, I'm going to have to take you to the notepad and explain what I'm after in slightly more detail. Gotta stick with the horror theme. So my plan for this outfit is that I want to create a kind of crown. But what I want to do for it is a sort of like raven skull. So my wee head's going to be under there. So I'll be able to sort of see through like maybe the nostrils or the eyes, but for the most part, my face will be hidden. I want to add like some fur to sort of make like a fill in the back of it basically, and then stick in loads of feathers and leaves and little bones and things just to bring in that sort of forest floor shambles look. I also want to add a little pair of antlers and sort of hang stuff off them. That was something I really liked and thought was really effective on my Fey Queen outfit, so I'd like to sort of continue with that. And then the rest of my outfit is going to be my sort of Robin Hood ensemble, but then I'm going to use the Fey Queen cloak, sort of bring it about me, and just add loads of texture and dimension. So that's the plan. How I'm going to achieve that, I'm not sure just yet. I'm going to have a look online at some tutorials and things like that and see if I can maybe find a template. So I'll get back to you once I've got an idea. Hey ho, so what I've got here is a template for a bird mask from sksprops.com. They have a really good YouTube channel that explains how to assemble all these. They're all made from like foam and stuff. I'll put a link into that obviously below. And their patterns are free, they just ask for a donation, which is really nice. And yeah, they look really good, so I'm quite excited to give this a try. Obviously I'm going to have to tape all this up first. Now I have upsized this by 200% because I want this to be a really oversized mask sort of on my head rather than a mask on my face. So we're just going to get this taped together and then get the foam out and start figuring this out. It might be a bit trial and error just because I am deviating with the size. I don't have quite the right materials. I've only got a sort of 2mm foam, whereas this one's like 6 and 8. So I do have a lot of foam clay though, so that'll hopefully help. That's an idea of what the bird mask will look like. So it's got this long curved beak. It's almost sort of Plague Doctor-ish in its shape, with this long beak. But it's slightly more realistic than a Plague Doctor. Really looking forward to how this is going to turn out.
So we started off with everybody's favourite bit, the sellotaping. I then cut out all of the paper pieces before tracing them out onto the foam that I have. I only had a finite amount of foam, so I had to be quite sparing and really try to use up every inch that I could. And then came the glue gun. You're going to see a lot of the glue gun in this video. The video tutorial for this is phenomenal, and although you can't see it, the laptop is just off screen here and I'm following along with the directions as I go. The keystone of this whole structure is indeed a baseball cap. I glued the mask onto the brim of the cap, which would hold it at a nice angle so that I could see through those nostrils, and then after that it was time to get the foam clay. If the number of angles doesn't give it away, getting the foam clay on this was an absolute nightmare. I had to try and counterweight it, and then when that didn't work, just had to concede defeat and basically prop up that skull so that it would not deform too much.
Overall, really pleased. The second layer of foam has really smoothed it all out. I am going to sand it. However, there's still like a lot of texture, like a lot of sort of pocking that I do want to keep. So we're not going to like make it completely smooth. I do want to keep a lot of this texture because it does make it look old and beaten. So yeah, really pleased so far. I'm going to let that dry for now and then I'll get sanding. Okay, to be fair, the angle does make it look a lot bigger than it is. But I am so pleased with how this has come out so far. It's had a few days to just fully dry out, so I'm happy that the foam has properly dried. And my plan now is going to be to just give it a light sanding, just to get rid of the worst of any sort of marks that are obvious that it's foam clay basically, or little bits that are sort of dangling off. I've got a couple of little thready bits at the back here. I want to keep the majority of the texture, the sort of pock marks and stuff, because it's really adding to the fact that it's not perfect. The skulls are not perfectly smooth. And then once that is done, it's going to be putting on a base coat of white paint and then building up some layers of colour after that. First of all though, the sanding.
Once I was happy with the sanding, I gave it 2 base coats, white on the outside and grey on the underside.
So I'm going to rework this design a little bit. I've decided I'm going to ditch the antlers because although they would have looked really cool, there's a lot going on, and with the size of the skull, I'm just concerned about weight at this point. Not that the skull is very heavy and the shroud shouldn't be very heavy, but I'm going to have this thing on my head all day, so I want to keep my weight down a bit. And it's also, the skull's slightly ungainly with the length of it, so adding more height I think is just going to be a bit too much for me. Saying that though, I'm toying with the crown, but nonetheless, I'm still going to do my furry shroud, and in the shroud I've got loads of different types of feathers, so I'm going to insert them into the fur to give it a lot of texture, and I'm going to sew in some strings of beads and feathers and bones. Like I've still got loads of the little skulls, little bird skulls and stuff that I'm going to stitch into it just to give it loads of like texture basically. With the skull, I'm going to sort of mimic an actual raven beak, and we're going to do the beak black, and I'm going to sort of fade it into a grey into the skull, and then on the skull I want to do like some runes. So I've decided that this character is going to be called Munnin, after Odin's raven. It means memory, so the idea being that this is a creature created from the memories of the sort of the scraps and the death on the forest floor, and I want to put in some Nordic style runes on the skull. So we're going away from the sort of shaman look and leaning back into more of a sort of Nordic vibe, that sort of Viking vibe, with the skull. It's a very loose inspiration. We're still keeping the idea loosey-goosey. It's going to keep evolving as we go. This is sort of the nature of this kind of project. Like I have a concept and a vibe and we're just going to run with it. As I alluded to at the start of the video, we are in the middle of a heat wave.
So the skull is currently outside drying between coats, and yeah, I will pick up and show you how that's looking. Okay, so please ignore the scraping noise. Someone across the road's getting some work done on their roof, but I am so pleased with how this is turning out. It's, here we go. So you can see the colour difference. Like if I look at the tip of the beak here, you can see the colour difference with that sort of bone colour, which looks really good. It's not consistent, the paint, because I've sponged it on, but I think that works for the weathering. It shouldn't be a sort of consistent base. I'm going to add some more weathering to it, but I think my next step is going to be the beak itself, just because I think once that's done, I'm going to get a better gauge of the overall sort of colour depth on it. So yeah, it's going to be the beak, weathering, and then the runes. But overall, really pleased with how it's looking so far. The clouds have all rolled in, so I'm going to keep an eye on that. I may have to abort being outside and taking advantage of the heat and continue this inside, but we'll wait and see. It still needs a bit of drying before I can do anything else just now anyway, and yeah, I will check in once I start the beak. I decided not to risk it and took the project inside. With the black to the grey, I initially started on that jet black and then just brought those lighter tones down and worked back and forth until I was happy with the blend. Okay, so my skull is currently drying in the kitchen. I decided not to risk it with the clouds. It has stayed dry, but didn't want to risk it. What I'm going to do now is, whilst that is drying and doing its thing and being precious, I want to start looking through the bits for the cloak. I have here a rather large pile of stuff, not gonna lie, all scavenged from the loft. So I've got a big piece of black fur, a little fur stole. The black is longer and slightly shinier, this fur, so I don't know if I might use that for like the sort of the transition piece between the skull and the rest of it, or I might just overcomplicating, undecided. I've got my original fake wing cloak here. There we go. And I still want to keep this as a separate piece because I would like to have a cloak underneath, and then the skull and the sort of headdress, shroud, I'm not quite sure what the word is going to be, but I want it as a separate piece. So I'm not going to use this for the skull piece, but I have it on hand in case I need to poach things. I don't think I'm going to have to poach much though, because I still have lots of leftover leaves from when I made that one, because I hoard everything and don't throw anything away. I've got feathers, and more feathers, and more feathers. I also have a box of little foam clay bird skulls and bones, again from when I made the fake queen there, because again, I never throw anything out. A little bag of shark teeth, because everyone collects shark teeth, right? And a great big box of beads. This is specifically my miscellaneous not precious beads. So I've got like wooden ones, I've got shells, weird little trinkety bits and stuff in here. Not sure what I'm going to use. I'm definitely not going to use all of it. There's a lot of stuff here. I'm not quite sure how much of what I'm going to use. Like I said, this whole project is kind of vibes. We're going on a spooky vibe, and I want to make something kind of fun and eclectic, but we're just rolling with it. So, is there a process? No. The plan is going to be that I want to make the kind of shroud first. I don't have tons of fur, but I do have enough that I think, I want the grain to come down the way. Bearing in mind it's going to go sort of that. So if I tidy it up and even out the sort of slightly odd shapes, this is when you're making teddies, you end up with odd shapes cut out of it. So if I tidy it up, it's actually not too bad like that kind of way. It's kind of like a little set of wings actually. Whee! So yes, I kind of wanted to sort of drape down like that, sort of probably to about there actually. I don't want it too long. So I'm going to start with shaping this piece first, I think. I'm not The little black stole, I don't know if I'm going to use or not. I think if I do use it, it'll be that sort of transition from skull to fur. So yeah, we're going to get this shape nice. I'm going to trim off the sort of weird edges and get this trimmed up nice and figured out. And then once I've got that done, I can then look at decorating it. And yeah, fun and games. Like, quite excited to see how this is going out. Having the beak painted has really given me a boost on this project, because I think it looks so good. So, right, crafting. I decided to maximise what I could out of the fur and went with a sort of semicircle shape. Bearing in mind I did want to do a hem on this later on. For the cloak, I kept it easy and decided to do a split cloak. This meant just simply trimming off the top of the original cloak, that was kind of the hood, and then opening up part of that seam on the back. Split cloaks are really versatile. You basically just sort of drape the short end across your back, and then the long parts can either hang to the front or be swept, one to the back or both to the back. Really functional and actually, in my opinion, quite underused. And then we were back to the painting. My first step was to touch up where I wasn't quite happy with the initial coverage, and following that, it was then doing the dark wash. It's a bit scary doing this because that brown looks awful, but you wipe it off and then it sort of seeps into all of the cracks and crevices and really helps age and weather. I did go in and add some really dark parts just because I really wanted this to look like it had been sat on the forest floor for years. For the runes, I initially marked on in pencil what I wanted them to look like before taking a Sharpie to them. I'm not gonna lie, putting a Sharpie to this was probably the scariest part of this entire project, but I am so happy with the final result on it. I then glued down the shroud, and once I was happy that the glue had set, I actually took the time to stitch down the shroud as well, because I wanted to make sure that even if the glue failed, this was going to stick together. And that was easier said than done. It's quite thick at points. Okay, so I'm a little bit of an idiot, and I've put the shroud on before sealing the skull, but I have a workaround for that. However, can we just take a moment to admire how cool this thing is? It's so sinister, and yeah, I realised I can actually perch it up, so if I need to actually see someone properly, I can kind of raise it on my head. And it's still kind of cool with that higher angle. I'm going to do some face paint and stuff on the day, just in case eyes can get seen through eye holes and stuff. But yeah, overall really pleased with this. I think the runes look fantastic. And the whole thing just looks super sinister. Next step is going to be sealing this. I'm just going to use some tinfoil or something just to protect the shroud from the varnish. That's not a problem, that's easy. And then after that, it's going to be adding all the embellishments into this, because I want it to have feathers and more sort of height to it almost. I mean, height's not the right word, but you know what I mean. I want to have texture. Once that's done, it's sorting out the bandages for the arm wrap. So we'll see how we're doing. We're kind of ahead of the game. I've got 2 weekends. Everything is a con crunch for me. I'm sorry, guys, but yeah, I am so pleased with this. Just the silhouette is sinister, you know, especially when I put it on properly. Just that is crazy. So, yeah, get this varnished and I'll be back. And so beginneth the trial of the glue gun. I started off with all of the feathers and then I put in all of the bones. After a quick fit check, I decided I wanted to add in the leaves as well. And whilst they aren't on camera, I also added in loads of beads and other such things. How cool has this worked out? I am super pleased with this. I think it's really quite ominous, actually, if I just wiggle into it. So I can see through the nostrils just fine. And I figured out that if I need to see someone better, I can actually just tilt it up like that and then look like properly under the beak, which is really handy. I want to do a quick fit check just because the event is coming up really soon and I'm not going to have a lot of time now to do any big adjustments. So we're going to do a quick fit check of everything all together. That's why it's all here. And then I can figure out if there's anything else needing done or if we're ready to go to the party. Okay, so really pleased I did do a fit check on this because my leg wraps are actually way too short. They're a completely different kind of leg wrap. They are literally just for the ankle. So I'm going to make some new leg wraps because I don't really want sort of the shorts look with this outfit. Everything else, however, really pleased with. I think when I do my makeup on the day, I'm sort of planning like sort of black and then sort of just to completely eclipse around the eyes just to really make it more sinister. But I think it is all going to come together really well. Like, I love like the layers that this thing has with like the cloak and the shroud. But yeah, I'm gonna have to redo my leg wraps. Won't take me long. I'm going to do that off camera, so I'm going to check in again with yous, hopefully when I'm getting ready for the event, see how I'm doing for time in the morning. But if not then, definitely at the event. So yeah, looking forward to getting spooky. Doing a little bit of a get ready with me, and the plan is to do like the top half of my face in black. So I'm going to just even out the skin tone on the bottom with a bit of foundation first. And hopefully this all comes together the way it is in my head. We're going with snazzery today. And today's get ready with me for my fantasy event. Oh dear. Oh, it's very black. Please don't cancel me. I actually have no idea what I'm doing with the black part. I'm just going with the concept of surely a makeup sponge is the best way to do this. Oh, it is so black. I'm pleased to say that I was not cancelled. I did end up going over this with a brush in the end to get a really dark black. Guys, I can't begin with how awesome this turned out. And I'm going to be honest, it wasn't until I saw this footage here of us walking into the Unseelie that I realised just how kick-ass this costume looked. We had a great time at the Unseelie. There were quests to do, Matt did a load of magic for the NPCs, and just overall it was really fun hanging out with loads of like-minded geeks like myself. I was even corralled into helping out with a jackalope puppet, which was hilarious. And whilst I didn't place, I did compete with this costume, and I got so many compliments on it from the other competitors, which really meant a lot to me. And also just tons of comments from people in general, like there is something inherently creepy about how this skull has come together, which is low-key hilarious because, as I've already said, I didn't realise how creepy this was until after the event, so I did not have any clue, like, just how unsettling this was. But yeah, 10 out of 10 would absolutely go again, and yeah, already coming up with plans for next year's costume, so stick around and find out what that is. But until next time, cheerio!